If you have already watched this introductory information, you can skip ahead no more than 16 minutes. Hello, welcome. I am predicting that famous singer-songwriter Paul Simon of the famous music duo Simon and Garfunkel will slip and fall to the ground on August 30th and then die as a result of his injuries on August 31st, 2025. This time-stamped email proves that this prediction that Paul Simon will die on August 1st, 2025 has been known since November 9th. We can see here the timestamp November 9th, 2024. On November 8th, 2024, we received the relevant prophetic signs related to Paul Simon. And as I wrote right here, God was pointing to November 8th ahead of time because Simon's death will point to Revelation chapter 8, verse 1. And this is the reason why Paul Simon will die on August 1st, 2025. In short, the date 8:1 and 11:8 hint at Revelation 8:1 in the Bible, which describes a period of silence that was observed in heaven. Paul Simon's first hit was Sound of Silence. As I wrote right here, it is exactly 38 weeks between November 8th and August 1st, 2025, and Paul Simon is predicted to die at the age of 83, for which 38 weeks hints at. All right, the analysis that God was pointing to August 1st was 100% correct. However, Paul Simon did not die on August 1st. Instead, God provided clear and relevant signs related to Paul Simon, which revealed adding 7 more days to reach August 8th. The sign we received was the news report, the breaking of the news of the sale of the storied mansion in Los Angeles that was built for the most prolific TV producer in history, Aaron Spelling, and God uses extremes and records for his signs, who produced the longest-running drama series in history, Seventh Heaven. That's how we get the addition of 7 days to reach August 8th. And Simon is associated with mansions, or I should say in God's signs, mansion theme and symbolism is related to Paul Simon, because his biggest solo album was the Graceland album, and the song Graceland is about Elvis Presley's mansion. There's lots to that for why God is using this theme, but this is immediately recognized. I've been following Paul Simon's signs for years now, and I've known about this theme of mansion symbolism for over 3 years. And so that's why it was immediately recognized that this sign involving the sale of this mansion, and one of the big signs is the sale of Paul Simon's mansion. It's not only a mansion sign on August 1st that we received, but the story was the sale of the mansion. And that's again because one of the signs is the sale of Paul Simon's mansion back on July 1st, 2022. And that the details of that prophetic sign are explained elsewhere. Now, another thing about the 7 days connection is Paul Simon at this time on August 1st he still is, but he won't be by the date of August 8th, touring for his new album, 7 Psalms. Okay, so just to review so far, we had God pointing to August 1st ahead of time, the date 8:1, because it describes in Revelation 8:1 a period of silence in heaven, and silence. The Sound of Silence is Paul Simon's first big hit that launched his career. On that day, we received the relevant clear sign, which was the sale of the mansion of the most prolific TV producer who produced the longest drama series in history, Seventh Heaven. Paul Simon's best-selling album was Graceland, and it was his 7th solo album, and this 7th album of Paul Simon's is named Graceland, which is named after a mansion, Elvis Presley's mansion. One of the songs that was one of Paul Simon's big hits on the Graceland album is the song The Boy in the Bubble, which was inspired by the TV movie that was produced by Aaron Spelling, The Boy in the Plastic Bubble. Currently, or at the time of August 1st, Paul Simon was touring for his 7 Psalms album. the seventh heaven sign, in other words, of this, that's derived from this sale of this mansion that belonged to the TV producer that produced Seventh Heaven, indicates revealed adding 7 days. There's more confirmation for the fact that God was pointing to August 8th, far more. However, for the sake of simplicity in discussing this here, we received the prophetic sign on August 1st to add 7 days. Now, on August 8th, we received another prophetic, clear, relevant sign regarding Paul Simon, which was the news about the Royal Caribbean cruise ship. And God uses records and extremes for signs, and this is the world's largest cruise ship that this incident occurred on, which was the glass part of the water slide breaking, busting through, causing the person that was sliding to become seriously injured. And this was a slip sliding away sign, one of Simon's big hits, Slip Sliding Away, which comes from the album Greatest Hits, etc., which was released in 1977. And so that's more confirmation for the prior 7 days connection from August 1st. There was another slip sliding away sign on August 8th, which was the NASCAR driver who slipped on top of his car after he was in the victory lane celebrating and seriously injured himself. He broke his collarbone. That was another slip sliding away sign on August 8th. And this NASCAR driver that slipped from the roof of his car in the victory lane as he celebrated drives car number 88. And this slip sliding away sign occurred on the date 8/8, August 8th. Now, the reason for this slip sliding away cruise ship sign on August 8th is because Revelation chapter 8, verse 8 describes ships. And it is a long story to explain, but the ships described in Revelation chapter 8, verse 8, which is what the date 8/8 hints at with this ship sign, is symbolism for America. The ships are symbolism for America, and that's because of Isaiah chapter 23, which is about America. For those that say America isn't in Bible prophecy, it isn't correct. And the daughter of Tarshish is America in the book of Isaiah chapter 23, and Tarshish is the UK. And so the ships of Tarshish, and therefore the ships of the daughter of Tarshish, are the naval power of the UK and America, which gave these nations supremacy militarily in the world during the 19th and 20th centuries. The point is that this reveals adding 23 days to August 8th to get the date it is predicted that Paul Simon will die on August 31st. Again, because the slip sliding away sign on the cruise ship, the broken slide, points to the ships in Revelation 8:8 because it occurred on the date 8/8. And we know that the ships in Revelation 8:8 symbolize America because of Isaiah chapter 23. That's why we know to add 23 days. There are many more profound reasons for knowing that Paul Simon will die on August 31st, but that's enough for this explanation here that gets us from August 1st to August 31st. It is now recognized that Paul Simon will slip and fall on August 30th, and then die the next day on August 31st as a result of his injuries. What this means is that it is irrelevant what Paul Simon's current state of health is, and there is zero news in the media regarding Paul Simon's state of health. But it is irrelevant anyway, because although I am predicting the death of an old man, it is predicted that he will die as a result of his injuries from slipping and falling the day before he's predicted to die. He's predicted to die on August 31st, but he's predicted to slip and fall to the ground on August 30th. Now, the reason for going into all of this is because it needs to be explained that in reality, or rather essentially, I predicted that Paul Simon would die on August 31st back in November of 2024. Because again, as I explained here in this email that was written on November 9th, 2024, God was pointing to August 1st, 2025 for Paul Simon's death because of Revelation 8:1, as I explained. And I just now explained the trail of signs that led from August 1st to August 8th to August 31st. And those signs were revealed through knowing August 1st ahead of time. Therefore, Essentially, if you are reasonable and you have the eyes to see, I predicted that Paul Simon would die on August 31st back in November of 2024. The reasonable person will recognize that this is true. One last thing to mention here, to make clear, is that back in November of 2024, I predicted that Paul Simon would die in the month of August, because August is the 8th month of the year. And again, Paul Simon's death will point to Revelation chapter 8, which describes a period of silence in heaven, and Paul Simon's first big hit that launched his career was Sound of Silence. But more than that, Paul Simon's precise date is also being predicted. It isn't only that it is predicted that he will die in the 8th month of the year, but specifically August 31st. I am not as confident in these next two predictions number 2 and 3, but it seems that it is possible that dirty bombs will explode in New York City and Los Angeles on September 4th, 2025. There will be a large-scale evacuation from Manhattan Island. This is going to happen. It's just a question of whether this will occur on September 4th. One of the dirty bombs will explode in Penn Station, and another of the dirty bombs will explode in the port of Los Angeles. I am also not confident in prediction number 3, which is that Tehran in Iran and or Damascus in Syria will be nuked. Again, this will happen. It's just a question of whether or not this will occur on September 7th. I am predicting that Kamala Harris and Gavin Newsom will die in a plane crash in St. Louis as they are traveling from Washington, D.C. to Los Angeles in Busch Stadium in St. Louis on August 2nd, 2028. This will be during the predicted presidential campaign of Gavin Newsom. As a result of Gavin Newsom's death, Michelle Obama will become the Democrat Party's presidential nomination. Michelle Obama will, quote unquote, win the election over J.D. Vance on November 7th, 2028, and will become the president on January 20th, 2029. Donald Trump is predicted to run as J.D. Vance's vice president. This scheme to overcome the 22nd Amendment will backfire and inspire Michelle Obama and Barack Obama to run on the ticket with Barack Obama as Michelle Obama's vice president. She will then step down and Barack Obama will become the president again. It is predicted that there will be a massive Mary apparition on the beach in Rio, Brazil on April 24th, 2029. It is now recognized that there will be 2 massive Mary apparitions on the beach in Rio. The first of the 2 is predicted to be on March 22nd, 2029. These predicted Mary apparitions will not be secretive. They will be mainstream, worldwide news. Like all Mary apparitions in history, including at Lourdes, Guadalupe, and Fatima, this Mary apparition will be a demon pretending to be Mary. It is predicted that on April 26th, 2029, the key will open the bottomless pit and fallen angels will cross over into the earthly realm. April 26th, 2029 will be a symbolic beginning to the 5th trumpet judgment that is described in Revelation chapter 9, when the demonic realm collides with the earthly realm. April 26th, 2029 will be a symbolic beginning to demons pretending to be aliens. The demons pretending to be aliens will claim to be here to help us with our nuclear weapons. It is predicted that Pope Francis will be resurrected from the grave on April 26th, 2029, and it is possible that on this day, Pope Francis will announce that aliens have arrived and have made him the ambassador for the world. This will immediately give Pope Francis, the Antichrist, supreme power over governments of the world. April 26th, 2029 will be a symbolic beginning to a zombie pandemic and the masses becoming demonically possessed. that will be facilitated through the thing, which is the mark of the Antichrist and 5G frequencies. April 26th, 2029 will be a symbolic beginning to the coming genocide politicide in America. The resurrection rapture event will occur on Pentecost on May 27th, 2029. On September 11th, 2029, there will be a catastrophic asteroid hit of Earth in the Indian Ocean. The greatest seismic effect of this will be felt on the other side of the globe, which is North America, and this will trigger an eruption of Yellowstone volcano and will cause the volcano in the Canary Islands to collapse into the Atlantic Ocean and send a mega tsunami towards the East Coast. It will also trigger the collapse of the Hoover Dam, which will cause a water panic in California, and many other devastating earthquakes. The day of the Lord, the second coming of Lord Jesus Christ, Judgment Day, will be at the end of 2031. The date that this video is posted proves that these predictions are being made ahead of time, as do these time-stamped emails and forensic notes PDF documents. If you are skeptical for some reason, please email me and I will forward these to you. All right, welcome. This video is predicting that famous singer-songwriter Paul Simon of Simon and Garfunkel will die on August 31st, 2025. This video, however, was produced prior to it being learned the way in which Paul Simon will die. It is now recognized through God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections, which is only being explained on this channel, that Paul Simon will first slip and fall on August 30th, and then, as a result of his injuries, will die on August 31st. Paul Simon has a big hit, a hit song, Slip Slidin' Away. And this is one way in which God, or through this song and many other prophetic signs, God is communicating that Paul Simon will slip and fall on August 30th and then die the following day. Currently, there is no news of Paul Simon's health. Absolutely no news of Paul Simon's health is in the media. Furthermore, he recently finished a concert tour on August 6th. So as of August 6th, he was healthy enough to perform at concerts. But given now that we know he will die from falling, his health, his state of health, would be irrelevant anyway. So it'd be one thing to predict the death of an old man. He is 83. That said, he could live another 7 years. There's no way to really know that he will die on August 31st because there's no news of his personal health. But more than that, he is predicted to die from falling and suffering from the injuries. And that cannot be known ahead of time. There's no prior warning or heads up, such as a person's health or state of health. Again, just to be clear, Paul Simon is predicted to die on August 31st, yes, and he is old, yes, but he is predicted to die from falling. And that date is known also to be August 30th, which is after today's date. The post date of the video you are watching on the social media platform proves that this video was posted prior to August 30th. And of course, there's no humanly way possible that I could know that Paul Simon will slip and fall on August 30th and then die the following day. In other words, when this prediction comes to pass, it'll prove everything that I say in this video, and that's the purpose of this prediction that is from God. And it is also, of course, to prove that the righteous Christian God of the Bible is the true God. All right, now, this particular video that you are watching was produced prior to August 19th, 2025. God overwhelmingly pointed to the date August 19th regarding Paul Simon, and because of that, it was assumed that this would be the day that he would fall and that he would die 12 days later on August 31st. What happened is that August 19th ended up being another step in the trail of signs, and this is how God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections works, which is only being explained on this channel. It works in principle on trails of signs. The full intended meaning of any of God's prophetic signs cannot be properly or fully understood without their context and connections to the other prophetic signs, something that other sign watchers don't fully appreciate. And it is through these interconnected signs that God is able to tell stories, and it is through these stories and themes that God is able to communicate extremely important and essential knowledge that everyone needs to know, which is why all of the videos must be watched. And so what happened on August 19th was we received another clear, relevant Paul Simon sign, which would have been expected had it not been the day he would fall. We would expect that he would fall or another clear, relevant sign. Now, the sign we received on this day overlapped another thing that God is communicating, which is the prediction for the explosion of dirty bombs in New York City and Los Angeles. Now, what happened was on this day, Walmart recalled a lot of their shrimp from the Great Value line of shrimp, frozen shrimp. It's a long story. I explained it in another video, but long story short, it's one of these many boat ship signs that God has been communicating in relation to Paul Simon during this month of August, as explained in other videos. And so the shrimp come from a shrimp boat from Indonesia, and that's prophetic for a reason, which is explained in the other videos, in particular, that this particular sign. But this all points back to the movie Forrest Gump. A big part of the plot is a shrimp boat, a shrimping boat. And the reason for Forrest Gump is that Forrest Gump is known for its soundtrack, as is Paul Simon and Art Garfunkel known for a soundtrack to a movie, Mrs. Robinson. The song Mrs. Robinson appears on the Forrest Gump soundtrack. In fact, one of the iconic scenes in the movie of Forrest Gump running across the country, across America, is it appears when this song is played, Mrs. Robinson. Simon and Garfunkel are also known for a song named America, which is also about traveling across America. The famous Forrest Gump soundtrack sold over 12 million copies. And that is 3 times 4 million copies, and Paul Simon is being associated with the Hebrew idiom for 3 transgressions and for 4 in God's signs. That's why, for example, the first Simon and Garfunkel album was titled Wednesday Morning, 3 a.m. Wednesday is the 4th day of the week. Okay, so also 12 because God is using Paul Simon for symbolism for Revelation chapter 12. Another story that's explained in other videos. Anyway, August 19th plus 12 days is the date it is predicted that Paul Simon will die. And so that's how this particular prophetic sign, and the shrimp is being recalled due to radioactive contaminants in the shrimp, which hints at the coming evacuations due to the radioactive contamination in New York City and the port of Los Angeles. Okay, which, by the way, will be 4 times 4 days later. And, well, anyway, I've explained in other videos how the number 4 is supremely relevant to Paul Simon, including, for example, pointing to the idiom that I just mentioned for 3 transgressions and for 4. Now, as you watch the rest of this video, keep in mind that, again, this video was made prior to August 19th. We received the prophetic sign that confirmed all of the analysis, and so therefore all of the analysis is 100% correct. It just wasn't the day that Paul Simon was going to fall. It was a date for another prophetic Paul Simon related sign, which I just touched upon. I didn't really explain, But anyway, again, it also reveals that he'll die 12 days later. So, for example, when I talk about in the rest of this video, the date 8/19 and the day Paul Simon will fall, keep in mind that it's just part of the trail of signs, and it was completely relevant, the analysis that you'll be hearing. And so therefore you need to learn this analysis because God provided this analysis for you so that you could pick up on what God is communicating through his big picture of signs, patterns, and connections, which, like I said, tells these stories that you need to know. Lord willing, when Paul Simon dies, he will be homeward bound. Simon's song Homeward Bound was released on January 19th, 1966, exactly 715 months before Simon's predicted fall. 715 is the 587th composite number. A composite number are numbers that aren't prime numbers. In God's signs, Paul Simon is symbolic of 9/11 in 2001. For example, he performed at the first Saturday Night Live broadcast in Manhattan after 9/11. He also performed at the 10th anniversary at the 9/11 Memorial. Simon is also from New York City. Just 2 months after 9/11, in 2001, Flight 587 crashed into Queens, New York City, where Paul Simon is from. Let me just pause here and give you another second witness to this prophetic sign. This is a big sign, and it's relevant in other ways in God's big picture of signs. It's only just now discovered that it relates to Paul Simon because he's from Queens. It also, for example, relates to Trump, who's also from Queens. But anyway, on the day that Flight 587 crashed, the Pick 3 Lotto in New Jersey, which was the location from where the towers were seen to be struck across the Hudson River. In other words, it's part of the 9/11 sign. Anyway, on that day, that was the first, and God uses firsts for signs. It was the first day ever that the New Jersey Lotto had 2 Pick 3 Lottos in the same day. The first Pick 3 Lotto numbers were 587, and then later in the day, the Pick 3 Lotto numbers were 578. And that was the day of the crash of Flight 587. That was 2 Lotto numbers. This was 2 months after 9/11. Okay. Now, and if you recall, because of that, people at first believed it was probably another terrorist attack. How could that happen just 2 months after 9/11? That happened because it's from God, a prophetic sign, another warning. Incidentally, I'll elaborate more on that. The date of the crash is the sign. It crashed on the date 11/12, so just 1 day more than 2 months after 9/11. But the date 11/12 is in itself a 9/11 sign because it hints at the 11th hour transitioning into the 12th hour. That's why on 9/11, Flight 11, with a crew of 11 people, crashed into the Twin Towers that looked like a giant 11 in New York State, the 11th state to join the Union, and New York City has 11 letters. The reason for all of this is because Jesus coined the phrase the 11th hour, which in ancient Israel referred to the last hour of daylight before darkness. In other words, the transition into the darkness, the 12th hour, which is again the reason for the date 11/12. In English, the 11th hour is an idiom that means last chance. Time is running out. As in other words, the events of 9/11 were a warning of last chance. Time is running out. That period of last chance will have been concluded, if you will, with the death of Paul Simon. Do you understand how profound and important the death of Paul Simon is? Paul Simon, again, is the warning that parallels the warning in Revelation chapter 8, the sound of silence in heaven, which is followed by the 7 trumpet judgments. And America is described in those 7 trumpet judgments, as I explain in other videos. the mistaken belief that America isn't in Bible prophecy is incorrect. Do you see? Paul Simon, who symbolizes 9/11 because he's from New York City and sang at the first broadcast in Manhattan on Saturday Night Live after 9/11 and at the 10th anniversary at the memorial, is 9/11 symbolism. And that's why his death with this 587 number, because it connects to Queens and 9/11, is the bookend, if you will. Oh my, I just realized. Paul Simon, I have to look this up. There's something about bookends with Simon and Garfunkel. Hold on. All right, this is really crazy. I mean, this does happen. This happens all the time, actually. As I'm reading in the information that I wrote, something new comes to me. But this has to be the most profound thing of all, because it's finally understood. I mean, the big thing about Paul Simon is what I just said. I mean, I was just really just going with it, right? That's the Holy Spirit there. I was really just going with it. This was all new to me as I was speaking it into the microphone. He really is the bookend. I mean, literally. The fourth album of Simon and Garfunkel, and God uses the number 4, furthermore, in association with Paul Simon in his signs. The fourth album is the album Bookends. You know, I'm a little young for Paul Simon and Art Garfunkel albums, right? So I don't remember these things. This is all, you know, from research that I would know something like this. But I just recalled reading about bookends at one point in the past here, after learning about Paul Simon being prophetic. Anyway, this is the fourth album. And when I paused the video recording here, it was at 5 minutes and 5 seconds into this particular microphone recording. And the fifth song released from this album is America. Anyway, there's more to the number 5 in Paul Simon too. His last album with Simon and Garfunkel, Bridge Over Troubled Water, was the fifth album. That was their biggest album. The name Paul Simon is equal to 500 in Hebrew gematria. The name Paul is equal to 50 in simple English gematria. A equals 1, B equals 2, C equals 3. His only solo number 1 hit was 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover. And I'm sure I'm missing some 5s here, but it's all about the 5s too. And that's because of the fifth trumpet, which is what God is also using Paul Simon for, which is explained in other videos. But anyway, one of the reasons for Paul Simon is that he symbolizes America. He is the GOAT, if you will, greatest of all time of popular songwriting, music songwriting. He's considered to be one of the GOATs, or if not the GOAT. And he does symbolize America. For one thing, he has this hit, America, and also a hit, American Tune, which incidentally he sang at the inaugural ball for a president, Jimmy Carter. So anyway, the point is that Paul Simon symbolizes America, and so the song America is on this album Bookends. For some reason, though, it says the song America wasn't released until many years later, which is strange. I guess they went back and released it later, realizing that it would be a hit. Oh, well, anyway, there may even be a prophetic reason to that I'm not aware of. Incidentally, the first song released from the album peaked at number 13 on the charts. And 13 symbolizes America, which was founded on 13 colonies. Okay, so anyway, let me just add this before moving on here. Some people always ask me, why are you always so focused on prophetic signs regarding America? The answer to that is because God is. America is God's Gentile nation. There are only 2 nations in the history of the world that were founded on a relationship with God and the Bible, Israel and America. And I had met a South African once tell me, well, no, the people that originally founded South Africa also, but no, that doesn't apply because they came from the Netherlands. And the Pilgrims were escaping religious persecution and from the King of England. That's why and they saw their crossing of the Atlantic as analogous to the Israelites' escape from the King of Egypt and the persecution, and then crossing the Jordan River into the Promised Land. The New World was the Promised Land for the Pilgrims. Okay, America was God's nation of Christian disciples. that he used to spread the gospel around the world in the 19th and 20th centuries. And Jesus said that he wouldn't return until the gospel had gone around the world, and now it has, because of America and the other English-speaking countries. So anyway, so God is, and judgment is commensurate with the amount of blessings and light the nation or individual has received. America was profoundly blessed, but it has turned away from God, and now it needs to be destroyed before the second coming of Christ. It's all part of the plan here, and God will regather and has regathered Israel in order to establish it as his nation through the 1,000 years of peace in the Messianic age, when Jesus Christ will rule from the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. And so that's where we are at. We are in the final years here with the end times and the persecution of true Christians, including by other quote-unquote Christians, in this final period led by the Antichrist. And in order to test the faith of these quote-unquote Christians and separate the chaff from the wheat, or the tares from the wheat and the goats from the sheep, etc. And then the second coming, okay? But it's all about America. It's all about his church. The purpose of the end times is his church, and America is his church. Okay? If you will. So that's why Paul Simon, the most famous American singer, songwriter, if you will, and by the way, he also represents the baby boomer generation, and it is also all about the baby boomer generation. Make no mistake, the second coming cannot possibly occur after the baby boomer generation passes away from the scene. There is absolutely no way that's going to happen, and they are beginning to pass away from the scene, and that's why the second coming is soon. It is also because of the baby boomer generation being where they at this stage of their life. Okay, it's a long story. That's another thing about Paul Simon, though. It's about the baby boomer generation. Okay, so I think we've covered enough here about the bookends. This is the most profound thing. Paul Simon is a bookend. Like I was saying, his death will be the bookend to the warning of judgment. That was the 9/11 events. In other words, because of the idiom that I just explained, for 3 transgressions and for 4, which means the tolerable limit of transgressions has been exceeded and now judgment is unavoidable, that will be communicated with the death of Paul Simon. There will be no more chance for America to repent and turn back to God. Sorry to those who are still expecting a revival, like the followers of Jonathan Cahn and Eric Metaxas, 2 people whom I love and have a lot of respect for. But that's what this sign will communicate. For 3 transgressions and for 4, there is no more time to repent. It's on. Paul Simon is the bookend. The period of grace, an opportunity to repent, will be communicated to be finished with the death of Paul Simon. And like I said earlier, I know far better than anyone the reason and purpose for this prediction that is from God. And the reason why God has given me a voice through this prediction. It is to prove what I have said. Judgment is now unavoidable.